Imagine standing at the entrance of a massive stone structure, its walls carved into the bedrock of an ancient island. Behind those bronze doors lies a maze so vast, so impossibly complex, that no one who enters ever finds their way out. And somewhere in that darkness, something waits. Something that is neither fully human nor fully beast. Something that hungers. This is not just a myth whispered around campfires. This is the story of the Minotaur, a tale that begins with a king's arrogance, a god's vengeance, and a curse that would demand the blood of Athens' children for generations. Meet the legend that defined ancient Greece's understanding of power, punishment, and the price of defying the gods. Welcome to the brand new episode of the channel, The Eternal Odyssey, where we explore the stories of myths and fantasies. Chapter 1, The Reign of Minos. Long before the name of Crete was whispered with all across the Aegean, before the great cities of men had risen to fame or fallen into dust, there lay an island gleaming like a jewel upon the sea. The winds carried the scent of olives and wine, and the waves lapped gently against harbors filled with ships from distant lands. At its heart stood Naxos, a palace of gleaming stone and painted walls, alive with the music of flutes and the fragrance of burning incense. Here, in this place of splendor and secrets, Minos, son of Zeus and Europa, claimed his throne. His lineage was divine, his ambition boundless. Yet his crown was not won without struggle. His brothers, Sarpedon and Rhadamanthus, sought their share of their father's legacy, and blood nearly spilled upon Crete's golden soil. But Minos was not like other men. He was shrewd, proud, and certain that destiny itself bowed before him. When the island trembled with dispute, Minos climbed the high cliffs above the roaring sea. The salt wind whipped his cloak as he raised his hands toward the heavens. Poseidon, he cried, voice ringing above the crashing surf. Lord of the deep, shaker of the earth, grant me a sign that all may know my right to rule is blessed by you. The sky darkened. The waves swelled. From the churning foam rose a bull of unearthly beauty, white as moonlight and terrible in its majesty. Its eyes glowed like molten silver. Its bellow rolled like thunder. The god's voice rolled across the water like distant thunder, carrying a command as ancient as the bond between mortals and the divine. Sacrifice this bull to me, and your throne will be secured. It was a sacred bargain, the price of divine favor made flesh and delivered from the depths. And Minos understood that when the gods bestow their blessings, they expect devotion in return. The people fell to their knees in awe, for surely this was no mortal beast. It was a gift of the god himself. Minos led the bull to his palace, his heart swelling with triumph. The island rejoiced. Minos is chosen of the gods, the people cried. His reign is divinely ordained, but power kindled greed within him, and greed invited ruin. For the bull was meant as a sacrifice to Poseidon, a token of gratitude for divine favor. Yet when Minos beheld its perfection, his resolve faltered. Such beauty, he murmured, running his hand along its gleaming flank. Such strength, surely the god will forgive me one small deception. So he offered a lesser bull upon the altar and kept the divine creature for himself. In the depths of the sea, Poseidon's eyes grew dark. The insult festered like salt in a lesion. Minos had dared to deceive a god, and no man deceives a god without consequence. The vengeance would come not through war, or lightning, or plague, but through something more insidious, the corruption of Minos' own house. And so the curse began. Chapter 2, Pasiphae's Curse. In the radiant halls of Naxos lived Pasiphae, queen of Crete and wife of Minos, daughter of Helios, the sun god. She shone with otherworldly beauty. Her eyes held the fire of dawn, and her voice carried the calm of twilight. She was proud, wise and strong, the perfect counterpart to a king. But when Poseidon's wrath stirred beneath the waves, it found her heart as the vessel of punishment. The god did not strike Minos' body, but his pride. Into Pasiphae's soul, he poured a tormenting madness, a desire twisted beyond reason. She would come to love the very bull her husband had refused to sacrifice. It began as a whisper, a strange fascination. She would watch the creature from the palace gardens, its breath steaming in the morning light, its muscles rippling beneath ivory hide. The more she tried to avert her gaze, the stronger the pull became. Pasiphae prayed to her father Helios for deliverance, walked barefoot through the temples, begged the gods for mercy. But the curse deepened. Desire burned through her veins like poison. Sleep abandoned her. Her attendants whispered in terror of her fevered dreams. And Minos, though suspicious, could not fathom the divine cruelty that had befallen his queen. Desperation drove Pasiphae to a man whose name would echo forever in myth, Daedalus, the craftsman from Athens, exiled from his homeland for crimes born of envy and genius alike. He had found refuge in Crete, where Minos prized his brilliance. To him, Pasiphae came one moonless night, veiled in secrecy. She whispered, "You alone can help me. You alone can craft what must be done." Daedalus, wise and weary, recoiled when she spoke her desire. "You are cursed," he said, his face pale. "What you ask is an abomination. Then let the burden be mine," she pleaded. "Only build what I need." And so, unwilling but compelled, Daedalus obeyed. He fashioned a hollow cow of wood and hide, so cunningly constructed that no eye could tell it was false. Within it, Pasiphae concealed herself. The divine bull, deceived by scent and shape, came to her in the meadow under moonlight, and thus the unholy union took place. The god's punishment fulfilled through mortal hands. When her time came, Pasiphae bore a child. The midwives screamed when they beheld it. The infant's body was human, powerful, and whole, but its head was that of a bull, crowned with horns, its eyes burning red. Pasiphae, trembling, named him Asterion, the Starry One. She loved him despite his monstrous form, for a mother's heart cannot deny its child. But Minos saw only shame and horror. The boy grew in strength and hunger. He devoured everything given to him, his appetites insatiable. As he aged, his nature darkened, his temper turned savage, his hunger unnatural. Blood called to him. Minos' halls trembled with his roars. At last, unable to bear the sight of the beast that bore his name, Minos summoned Daedalus once more. The king commanded, "Build me a prison from which no creature, no man, no monster shall ever escape." Daedalus bowed his head, and fate bound his hands to the shaping of a legend. Chapter 3, The Labyrinth. The cliffs of Crete echoed with the clamor of construction as Daedalus began his greatest work. The king's order was clear, a prison that would hold the impossible. But Daedalus, ever the artist, saw beyond the command. What he created would not be mere walls and corridors. It would be a world of confusion, a structure that mirrored the chaos of the soul itself. He studied the shapes of shells and the coils of serpents. He traced spirals in the sand, watched the eddies of wind and water. Slowly, a vision formed, a maze without end, a snare of geometry that could swallow reason itself. Beneath the palace of Naxos, he dug into the living rock. Workers toiled for years, guided by his hand, their torches flickering in the growing dark. Corridor met corridor, stair rose to stair. Chambers twisted back upon themselves until even Daedalus had to mark his path with chalk. The air was damp and close, filled with the smell of earth and stone. When at last the work was done, it was as if the earth itself had grown a heart, a vast, pulsing heart of stone that no man could ever fully know. Minos descended into its depths with Daedalus at his side. Their torches threw trembling light across the endless halls. The king smiled grimly. "Perfect," he said. "Even the gods would lose their way here." Soon after, the monster was brought forth. A Styrian, now grown to full and terrible strength, thrashed against his chains. His horns scraping the walls, his eyes red with fury. Pasiphaë wept, her cries echoing through the palace. "He is my son," she begged. "He has done no wrong, but to be born." Minos turned his gaze upon her, cold as stone. "He is no son of mine. He is the price of deceit." The beast was driven into the maze. The iron doors clanged shut behind him. His roars rolled through the tunnels, fading into the distance until only silence remained. In the days that followed, Crete prospered. Ships brought gold, spices, and tribute from faraway lands. Yet beneath the palace, darkness fed upon flesh and fear. From time to time, prisoners were thrown into the labyrinth. Criminals, enemies, the unfortunate. None ever returned. The people whispered of the monster below, the curse that could never be undone. But the gods were not finished with Minos. Justice, divine and mortal, always demands its due. Chapter 4, Athens in Mourning. Across the sea, the city of Athens shuddered under the weight of Crete's power. It began with a death, the death of Minos' son Androgeus, a youth of strength and beauty who had traveled to Athens to compete in the games. His victories won him glory, but also envy. One night, he was found slain, and none could say by whose hand. When the word reached Crete, Minos' grief became fury. He gathered his fleet and sailed against Athens, and the city's walls shook beneath the thunder of his vengeance. The Athenians fell before him, their courage no match for the wrath of a king whose blood had been spilled. The conqueror demanded a price, not in gold, but in flesh. Minos decreed every 9 years, "You shall send to me 7 of your finest youths and 7 of your fairest maidens. They shall enter the labyrinth, and there the beast shall feed." And so the cycle of terror began. Every 9th year, the black-sailed ship waited in Athens' harbor. The chosen were gathered by lot, for none volunteered willingly. The cries of mothers filled the air, mingling with prayers to the indifferent gods. Fathers stood in silence, unable to look upon their doomed children. The youths boarded the ship garlanded in white, as if for a wedding to death itself. King Aegeus of Athens, gray with sorrow, watched each departure from his palace upon the hill. "Would that I could end this curse," he said, his voice hollow. But he could not. Each time the black sails vanished beyond the horizon, Athens fell into mourning once more. The years turned like grinding stones. Hope withered, until one day, the whisper of a name began to rise among the people. A name that carried with it the promise of defiance. Theseus. He was the son of Aegeus, though some claimed his true father was Poseidon himself. A youth of unmatched strength, he had already proven his valor by cleansing the roads of monsters and brigands. His name spread like fire through Athens, and with it, the flicker of long-lost courage. When the time for the next tribute came, Theseus stood before his father. "Send me to Crete," he said. "Let me face this monster. Let me end this curse." Aegeus trembled. "My son, I cannot. You are the hope of Athens. If you perish, we are lost." The people whispered, "Theseus is our only hope." He stood tall and resolute. "Then I will go as one of the chosen. I will slay the beast or die as a man who dared." And Aegeus, though his heart broke, could not deny destiny. He said, "If you succeed, raise your sails in white when you return, that I may know you live. If they remain black, I shall know you are lost." So Theseus boarded the black-sailed ship, and as it slipped from the harbor, the city of Athens held its breath. Chapter 5, Theseus' Resolve. The sea stretched vast and glittering beneath the sun as the black-sailed ship cut its path toward Crete. The youths aboard were silent, each lost in dread. Only Theseus stood firm, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his spirit unbroken. He was more than mortal. He carried within him both man's courage and a god's fire. Born to a mortal mother and a father whose identity straddled heaven and earth. He bore the weight of fate like armor. The voyage was long, the days marked by salt and sorrow. The Athenians whispered of the monster that awaited them, of the maze that devoured all who entered. But Theseus spoke to them in calm, steady tones. He said, "Fear not, we are not lambs for slaughter. The beast may be born of gods, but bleeds as all creatures bleed. I will slay it, or I will perish, and either way, Athens will be free." At last, after 9 days upon the waves, Crete rose before them, an island of green valleys and white cliffs, crowned by the palace of Naxos. The harbor was filled with the gleam of bronze and gold, a vision of wealth and power. Yet beneath the beauty, a shadow lay heavy. On the quayside waited Minos, stern and unyielding, his crown gleaming in the sun. At his side stood his daughter Ariadne, her gaze curious and bright. When Minos beheld Theseus, he laughed. "You are bold, Athenian, to speak of slaying what the gods themselves have cursed. Many have entered the labyrinth, and all have perished." Theseus bowed slightly. "Then I shall be the first to return." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Minos frowned, yet something in the youth's voice struck him with unease. For though he mocked the Athenian, some deep part of him feared that fate was moving beyond his control. That night, as the prisoners were led to their quarters, Ariadne could not forget the fire in Theseus's eyes. She had seen fear in many men, but not in him. In him she saw something rare, a light strong enough to defy gods and kings alike. And so began the thread that would bind their fates together. Chapter 6, The Spark of Love. The palace of Naxos glittered in the sun. Gold and ivory adorned the palace walls, and banners bearing the bull's symbol fluttered in the breeze. Yet beneath the splendor, the air reeked of sacrifice. Minos awaited them, regal and terrible, his crown gleaming. He looked upon Theseus with scorn. "So you are the one who dares defy the gods' will. You think yourself stronger than the curse of Poseidon?" Theseus replied, "I think myself a man who has had enough of your tyranny." The people gasped at his audacity. Minos' face darkened, but before he could speak again, a softer voice rose from behind him. Ariadne, his daughter, had stepped forward. Her beauty silenced the courtyard. The sun seemed dim beside her, but it was not her beauty that struck Theseus. It was the sadness in her eyes, the quiet intelligence that hid behind them. That night, she could not sleep. She saw in her mind the Athenian prince's courage, his defiance, his calm in the face of certain death. For years, she had watched the labyrinth devour youth after youth, and her heart had grown heavy with pity. Now, for the first time, hope stirred within her. At dawn, she went to the prison where the Athenian captives waited. Her veil hid her face, but her voice trembled with urgency. "Stranger from Athens," she said softly, "I know who you are. You will face the beast tomorrow. You cannot defeat it without my help." Theseus looked upon her, surprised yet steady. "You would betray your father. I would betray cruelty," she said. "I have watched too many die. I will help you, if you promise to take me with you when you escape this island." "I swear it," he said without hesitation. That night, beneath the gaze of silent gods, she brought him to gifts. The first was a sword of Cretan steel, forged for a king's hand. The second, a simple ball of crimson thread. She whispered, "Tie this to the entrance of the labyrinth and unwind it as you go. It will lead you back from the darkness when the beast is slain." He took her hands. "You have given me life," he said, "and I will keep my promise." When dawn rose, their fates were entwined like the thread itself, fragile, unbreakable, destined to change the world. Chapter 7, Into the Labyrinth. The morning sun rose red over Crete, casting a blood-hued light upon the palace of Naxos. The chosen youths were led through the city streets, their hands bound with cords of silk. Crowds gathered to watch, some with pity, others with cruel curiosity. Before them loomed the entrance to the labyrinth, massive gates of bronze and stone, carved with symbols of bulls and serpents. From within, the air flowed cold and foul, carrying the stench of old blood and darkness. Minos stood upon the palace steps, his voice booming over the assembly. Behold the tribute of Athens. The beast shall feed, and Crete shall remain strong. But as Theseus approached the gate, he turned once more toward the heavens. Athens will be free, he murmured. Then, unseen by all but Ariadne, he tied her scarlet thread to the doorpost and stepped into the shadows. The gates slammed shut. Inside, the air was thick and still. The torches flickered against damp stone. Each step echoed endlessly, a whisper swallowed by the maze. The Athenians trembled, clinging to their hope in Theseus' strength. They walked until the air grew colder, the corridors tighter. Bones littered the ground, old and pale. Somewhere deep within, a sound began to rise, a low, rumbling growl that shook the walls. It was the Minotaur. Theseus turned to the others. "Stay here," he said. "Follow the thread. I will find the beast." He unrolled more of the crimson line, its color vivid even in the gloom, and moved alone into the heart of the maze. The growls grew louder, the air hotter, until at last he stepped into a chamber vast as a temple. There, among the bones of the dead, the shadow of the Minotaur moved. It was immense, muscles like stone, horns curved like scythes, eyes burning with hunger. The beast snorted, lowering its head. For a heartbeat, man and monster regarded each other, the product of divine sin and the promise of mortal courage. Then, with a roar that shook the labyrinth, the Minotaur charged. Chapter 8, The Battle with the Minotaur. The darkness shuddered as the monster thundered forward. Its hooves struck sparks on the stone, its breath steaming in the stale air. Theseus leapt aside, the bullhead grazing his shoulder as the beast crashed into the wall behind him. Stone split, dust filled the chamber. The echoes of the impact seemed to rattle the bones of the dead. The Minotaur turned, bellowing. The sound rolled through the maze like thunder under the earth. Its eyes glowed red, a furnace of hatred and pain. Chains still hung from its wrists, remnants of the bindings that had once tried to cage it, clattering as it moved. Theseus gripped his sword, feeling the weight of the steel and the weight of destiny alike. He steadied his breath. This was not a battle of men. This was a contest between the wrath of gods and the defiance of mortals. The creature lunged again. Theseus ducked beneath its horns, slashing across its flank. Blood spilled, dark, thick, steaming in the torchlight. The beast roared and struck out with one massive arm, sending him tumbling across the floor. His sword clanged against the stone. Pain lanced through him, but he forced himself to rise. The Minotaur was not simply rage. It was cunning, a hunter that had stalked men through the maze for years. It circled him, snorting, hooves echoing, every movement alive with power. Theseus closed his eyes for a heartbeat, recalling the stories of his lineage. Son of Aegeus, perhaps son of Poseidon. The blood of gods moved within him, but only courage would carry him now. The beast charged once more, horns aimed for his heart. At the last instant, Theseus rolled aside, seizing one of its horns as it passed. The monster's momentum dragged him close. With his free hand, he drove the blade upward with all his strength. Steel met flesh. The Minotaur roared, a sound of rage, of agony, of release. It staggered, flailing. Theseus tore his sword free and struck again. this time across the neck. Blood rained upon the stones. The creature dropped to its knees. Its breathing slowed. Its great head bowed, as though in surrender. In its eyes flickered something almost human, sorrow, recognition. An echo of the boy Asterion, who had once been loved by his mother. Theseus, the beast seemed to whisper in its death, though no words passed its lips. Then it fell, the weight of its body shaking the chamber. Silence followed. Theseus stood trembling, chest heaving, his skin spattered with the blood of myth. He looked upon the corpse and whispered, "Your torment is ended." He turned to the crimson thread, glinting faintly in the torchlight, and began the long journey back through the twisting halls. Behind him lay the echo of a curse broken. Ahead, the faint promise of daylight. When he reached the others, their faces filled with awe and disbelief. The beast, one whispered, "Dead." Theseus simply said, "The labyrinth holds us no more." Following the thread, they retraced their steps, hearts pounding as light grew before them. And when at last the bronze gates groaned open, Crete saw the impossible. The tributes returned alive, led by the slayer of the Minotaur. Ariadne, watching from the palace steps, felt tears of joy burn her eyes. The curse that had haunted her family for generations had been ended not by gods, but by a mortal's courage. Chapter 9, The Escape with Ariadne. The sun blazed over Naxos. As Theseus emerged from the labyrinth, the crimson thread still wrapped around his hand. The crowd gasped. For generations, they had watched victims vanish into darkness. Never had any returned. Theseus lifted the sword high, the blade dark with the blood of the Minotaur. "The curse is ended," he cried. "No more shall Crete feed the monster of its own making." The people shouted, some in awe, others in fear. Minos himself, when word reached him, raged within the palace. His daughter had betrayed him, his god-given punishment slain. He ordered his guards to seize the Athenians at once. But Ariadne had already acted. As the city erupted in confusion, she slipped through the corridors and found Theseus. "You must flee," she whispered. "My father's wrath will fall upon you before the sun sets." He grasped her hands. "Come with us." I swore I would not leave you behind. Under cover of night, they gathered the freed Athenians and made their way to the harbor. The black-sailed ship that had carried them to doom now waited to bear them to freedom. The moon hung low as they boarded, the sea whispering against the hull. Ariadne looked back once at the lights of Naxos, her childhood home now distant and strange. "It is finished," she murmured. The oars dipped into the water, and the ship glided from the harbor. Behind them, horns sounded an alarm, but the wind favored their escape. Crete dwindled into shadow. For the first time in years, laughter rose among the Athenians. Quiet, disbelieving laughter that trembled on the edge of tears. They had faced the unfaceable and lived. Theseus stood at the prow, the salt wind on his face. Ariadne joined him. "We are free," she said softly. He turned to her, eyes filled with gratitude. "It was you who gave me victory. Without you, I would still wander in darkness." Their lips met beneath the stars. In that moment, two worlds touched, the mortal and the divine, the cursed and the redeemed. Yet far above, the gods watched. Poseidon, still wounded by Minos' arrogance, stirred the waves. And another god, Dionysus, looked down upon Ariadne with a gaze that would soon shape her fate. Chapter 10, Naxos, Love and Abandonment. The sea stretched endless and bright as the ship carried its survivors across the Aegean. For many days, the voyage was calm. The winds were kind, the stars clear. The Athenians sang hymns of deliverance. Theseus sat often beside Ariadne, who looked upon the horizon with wonder. "The gods have shown mercy," she said. "Let us rest upon this journey, for soon we shall see your city." They came at last upon the island of Naxos, a lush paradise rising from the waves. Its shores were green with myrtle and laurel, its hills crowned with vines. Exhausted from their flight, they anchored in a quiet cove. Here, Ariadne said, "Let us rest a while. The gods have given us peace." On the soft sands of Naxos, they found respite. The Athenians gathered fruit, filled jars with clear water, and sang beneath the night sky. Theseus and Ariadne lay apart from the others, the surf whispering beside them. For the first time since the labyrinth, they were not haunted by fear. Ariadne dreamed of Athens, of walking beside Theseus through sunlit streets, of a new life free of her father's shadow. But fate, as ever, waited unseen. As she slept, a vision came to Theseus, or perhaps it was no vision, but the voice of a god. Some say Dionysus himself appeared to him in dream, demanding that Ariadne be left behind, for she was destined for divine love, not mortal. Others say doubt took root in Theseus's heart, a whisper of guilt and confusion. When dawn broke, the sea was calm and golden. Ariadne stirred, smiling, and reached for him, but the sands beside her were empty. Far off, beyond the curve of the island, the ship of Theseus had already set sail. Its black sails billowed in the wind. Ariadne rose, calling his name. Her cries echoed across the shore, but only gulls answered. The sea carried her voice away. She fell to her knees, tears streaking her face. "You swore," she whispered. "You swore you would not leave me." She watched until the ship became a shadow against the horizon. Her heart broke upon the sand, but the gods did not abandon her. As she wept, the air grew fragrant with wine and music. From the forest came Dionysus, crowned with ivy, surrounded by his satyrs and maenads. His eyes, bright as the stars, fell upon her. "Do not weep," the god said gently. "Theseus's path was not yours. You are mine, Ariadne. I will lift you beyond mortal pain." He placed upon her brow a golden crown, its jewels gleaming with celestial light. "Your name shall live forever among the stars," he said. And when she looked up, the heavens answered. The diadem glittered above the world, becoming the constellation Corona Borealis, the crown of Ariadne. Her sorrow ended where eternity began. Chapter 11, The Black Sails and Aegeus' Death. The ship of Theseus pressed onward toward Athens, the waves whispering beneath its hull. The crew sang songs of victory, their hearts light. The Minotaur was slain, the tribute ended, the curse broken. But Theseus himself stood silent at the helm. The wind tugged at his hair, the salt stung his face. He could not shake the shadow of what he had done, nor the vision of Ariadne's tear-streaked face. Yet destiny cared little for remorse. Far away, upon the cliffs of Cape Saunion, King Aegeus kept his vigil. Every day, he looked to the horizon, waiting for his son's ship. His body had grown frail, his beard silver, but hope kept him standing against the sea winds. He had given Theseus one command: change the sails from black to white upon your return, that I may know you live. But amid the songs of the crew and the rush of triumph, Theseus forgot. The black sails still fluttered above the mast as the ship neared home. At dawn, the lookout cried from the cliffs, "A ship from Crete approaches." Aegeus rushed to the edge, his heart pounding. He saw the dark sails and staggered back, the world spinning before his eyes. "Black," he whispered. Black as mourning, he believed his son dead. The sea stretched below him, vast and indifferent. "My son," he murmured, "my pride, my heart." Then, overcome with grief, he cast himself into the waves. The waters swallowed him, and from that moment, the sea bore his name, the Aegean Sea. When Theseus' ship reached the harbor, the people of Athens poured forth in joy. They hailed their hero, the slayer of the Minotaur, the liberator of the city. But joy turned to horror when news came from the cliffs. Theseus fell to his knees. His triumph turned to ashes. The sails fluttered above him, black against the blue sky. He had freed his people, but in doing so, had lost his father. That day, the Prince of Athens became its king, crowned not by celebration, but by sorrow. Chapter 12, The Legacy of the Minotaur. The years passed, and Athens rose from grief into greatness. The black sails no longer darkened its harbor. The people walked with pride, free from Crete's dominion. At the heart of this rebirth stood Theseus, their king, whose courage had turned despair into destiny. Yet in his quiet moments, he walked the cliffs where his father had died and gazed across the sea that bore his name. The memories came to him like ghosts, the gleam of Ariadne's hair beneath the moon, the roar of the Minotaur, the feel of his father's hands upon his shoulders. He had slain a monster, but some part of him knew the true labyrinth lay within himself. For the Minotaur had not been only a beast of flesh, it was the shadow of human pride, the darkness that dwells in all hearts. Theseus ruled wisely. He united the scattered villages of Attica into one city, forged laws to bind rich and poor alike, and created festivals so that every Athenian would know they belonged to something greater. His city became the cradle of freedom, of art, of thought. But he carried his burden always. He had faced monsters of the gods and monsters of his own making, and he knew the line between them was thin. In time, the tale of the Minotaur became more than myth. It became a mirror. The labyrinth came to symbolize chaos, the twisting paths of ambition and deceit. The Minotaur represented the beasts we make through our own pride. And Theseus, the mortal who entered darkness with nothing but courage and love, became the symbol of humankind's struggle against the impossible. On clear nights, Theseus would look up at the stars and find the corona borealis, the crown that Dionysus had given Ariadne, now shining among the constellations. It was a reminder that even betrayal could be transformed into something eternal, that even in abandonment, there could be apotheosis. If Ariadne could be lifted from her grief to divinity, perhaps there was hope for everyone who had suffered in the tale of the Minotaur. Perhaps all the pain had some purpose, some meaning beyond mere tragedy. Athens thrived under his rule and continued to thrive after him. The city that had once sent its children to die in darkness became a beacon of light, of learning, of democracy and debate and art. The curse that had defined them had been broken, and in breaking it, they had discovered who they truly were. People who refused to accept fate passively, who believed in human ingenuity and courage, who would rather die fighting than live in subjugation. And always, in the heart of Athens, the story of the Minotaur lived on. Parents told it to their children. Teachers used it to instruct their students. Playwrights adapted it for the stage. Philosophers debated its meanings and implications. It was a story about many things, about the consequences of pride, about the cruelty of gods, about the cost of freedom, about the complexity of heroism, about how we are all in some way trapped in labyrinths of our own, making hunting monsters that might be aspects of ourselves. The Minotaur was dead, but its legend would never die. It had become part of something larger than history, larger than any individual life. It had become myth, and myths have a power that transcends mere facts. They shape how we see ourselves and our world. They give meaning to suffering, context to triumph, and hope that even in our darkest moments, when we seem trapped in impossible mazes facing unbeatable monsters, we too might find within ourselves the courage and cunning to survive, to escape, to be free. And that, in the end, was the true legacy of the Minotaur, not death and horror, but hope and the unquenchable human spirit's refusal to surrender to darkness. Athens learned that lesson well and carried it forward through the centuries, a beacon lit in the heart of the ancient world, fueled by the memory of children who walked into death, and one hero who walked them back out into life. If this incredible journey through one of mythology's most haunting tales has captivated you, then help us keep these ancient stories alive. Hit that like button if the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur moved you. Share this video with anyone who loves history, mythology, or epic tales of courage against impossible odds. And subscribe to our channel, because there are countless more legendary stories waiting to be told. More heroes to discover, more monsters to face, and more lessons from the ancient world that still echo in our modern lives. The labyrinth may have fallen silent, but the stories it holds will never stop speaking to us. Join us next time as we delve into another chapter of humanity's greatest myths and legends. Thank you